Good evening, America. Thanks for tuning in. Contradictions, episode 14. We're coming to you with my main man, Kenny, and I got Glennon, and we're gonna go over a lot of topics tonight. We got the CHOP, the Chaz. We're going over Civil War monuments, and we got some Russia bounty on some U.S. soldiers. But let us introduce my colleagues right here. Kenny, go ahead, man. Introduce yourself. How you feeling, man? How you feeling? Welcome back.
I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back. COVID's getting more towards the background. Kind of embracing the loss of 10 pounds. Feel like I'm looking a little bit prettier. So when in doubt, take advantage of being sick. You can look a little sharper. But I'm excited to get into these things tonight. But I'm just glad to be back with you fellas.
Nice. Yeah, I bet you are excited to get into these topics tonight. But yeah, glad to have you back, man. You know, we missed breaking your balls, and definitely looking forward to talking about the topics that are up for discussion tonight. Really quick, I do know we've got Chaz. I'm sure Kenny's got a lot to throw in my face with Chaz. It's all good. We've got the Civil War monuments, which will probably be like the main event, I guess, if you will. And I'm sure we'll probably go back and forth on that also. We also have the Taliban. We've got Russia paying the Taliban to do some things. Is it true? Is it not true? I know Great Britain thinks it's true. I don't think Trump thinks it's true, but let's go ahead and get into it, gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Kenny, how about you start, man? Chop Chaz, what do you got?
All right. So here's the thing with the CHAP, right? You know, all of us agreed that, hey, look, we're going to take a look at this thing and see how it goes. The problem is that there is unintended consequences. And if it was to go, and I think all of us hope that it went better than it did, the fact that you had 2 lives lost, young kids, you had 4 shootings. When you break that down, the per capita numbers ends up basically being Beirut. So it just didn't last long the way. And again, it comes down to power. You know, if the people did it because they wanted to set some sort of example, then that's one thing. But power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when you give these people the carte blanche, then all of a sudden you're going to be chasing your tail. I thought it was hilarious that the mayor is now trying to go after the congresswoman because the congresswoman basically let him march down to her house. And then right after they sent it to her house, she's like, let's fix this. But when it's not her house, then there's no big deal. And that's the thing that we've talked about. It can't be good for the goose and then not good for the gander. Like, you don't get to say, hey, that's fine, go burn that building down. And then when they show up to your front lawn, then you're looking like quite the hypocrite when you're like, whoa, no, not my house. And that's exactly what happened to the mayor. It couldn't have happened to a better person. I can't wait till that buffoon gets pulled out of her office. The other day, his name's Kashima Sawant, was the one that basically took a group of people to her house. Little friendly fire there. So I don't know what Glenn thinks about that, but I'm just glad that this thing is cleaning this out. Let's get this thing done. Sounds like it's been maybe 20 people arrested, something like that. So it was done pretty quickly and swiftly. And the police, I believe, are getting back into the area that they were, but it's just a failed experiment. So
a total failed experiment. And Chaz, you're making me look bad on here. I was rooting for you guys, man. I was rooting for this autonomous zone thing. You know, I still like the idea of it. I think it was a good experiment. Now that it's gone wrong, and look, and I'll be honest, I said from the beginning that the odds were against you guys. Not only, for one, people are shitty people. I mean, you give somebody an inch, they want to take a mile. And as much as it kills me to say that, it's just the way it is. There's got to be some sort of law and order. It's just the way that it is. It has to be that way. So you gave these guys an inch. They took all sorts of miles. Again, 4 shootings in or near the Chaz area. You had 2 people that were killed, and it just turned into a complete shit show. I'm not surprised as of last week, Mayor Jenny Durkin, she did come on and say that she was going to bring the police back. She just didn't say when. The police still aren't officially like back. I know they did make some arrests, but they're not like they haven't reoccupied the East Precinct or anything like that. But it's inevitable. It's coming. And as of last week,
the area.
Yeah, they cleared the area. And that's the other thing, too. You know, when things started to become unruly, Mayor Durkin was still trying to kind of roll with you guys. He just said, okay, make sure you're out of the area by 8 o'clock. You acted a whole fool, didn't get out of the area by 8 o'clock, didn't follow any rules at all. There was no structure. There was no leader. And let's be honest, people, as much as I hate to say it, man, people need somebody to follow. People need somebody that has good sense, that has a good sense of libertarian values, and that thinks of everybody other than themselves to be able to put themselves in a position for people to want to follow them. So there was no leader, there was no organization. And you're making me look bad on here. I don't like it when Kenny's right.
And there were a couple other states where they tried to open some of these zones, so to speak, like DC. And then I think the mayor or the governor of Oklahoma came out and said, "Hey, look, you come here and try that crap. It's not going to happen."
They shut it down really quick. Yeah.
When there's a void of power, people try to take it, just like the one guy did with the braids. And then there was a white lady that did. At certain points, whenever there's that void, there was like this grab for power. And it's just funny because the idea is that you weren't supposed to be for that. And it just, it's disappointing because the libertarian side of me, there's certain things I would have liked to see move smoothly, and it just didn't. The fact that lady was really going to march 100 people up to the mayor's house is a bad thing. I don't care if I don't like the mayor. You just don't do that. Like, especially when some of these people, are going to make poor choices and put themselves in mass danger, and you don't know how that's going to go. And not to segue to this, but, I'd love to know your feelings, Glenn, when they broke down the pathway through to where the guy and his wife. And I'll tell you, I'm actually going to take it farther than they would have. I'll tell you this right now. If that's my house, and, that would have been it. Y'all take one step on this, I probably would have been more like she was, where she's walking at him and people can say, hey, you can't point the gun at somebody. And you don't have to walk through my fence into my yard. Like, once you start messing with my family, I'm planning on peeling all your shit back. I don't have, I'm not waiting, because the truth is, if these people did get attacked, and I take it back to my Marine Corps time, I got one gun and an overweight wife with a P-22. I mean, we're going to have to get our rounds downrange quick. And I have a lot of respect for them to not have escalated that, because I think if it was me, and if my buddy Pearson or
me, I'll be honest with you.
If you guys were at my house, if I had that house and I'm like, hey, man, come over here, dude. These people are coming on my property. And, man, I'm going to be pretty heavy on that trigger finger, a lot more than he was, because, at that point, there's going to come a point where it becomes very difficult when people say things like, well, they didn't do it. And it's like, well, I'm not going to get shot first. I didn't go onto your property. I was at my home. Right. So you've already came onto my home. I'm not waiting till you shoot me to shoot back. That's ludicrous. If I come to your house, then fine. Hold me accountable that way. But if you come to my house, I think about it, I live actually on a corner. When you come into my neighborhood where I live right now, mine's the first house. So if somebody was to march down the street and they come onto my house, dude, I'm going out there with my gun on my side, and I'm saying, look, man, don't freaking take one step onto my property. Go ahead and carry on about your business, because I'm not playing. I'm not playing.
And that's the thing too, man. And honestly, I would even take it a step further than that. It was a private community. It was a gated community. So the minute you break that privacy threshold, the minute you come through the gated community, you're on private property. People pay HOA.
You have been warned multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely. I pay money for this level of privacy or this luxury, if you will. And as soon as you don't even have to come on my property. If I feel like you're potentially going to threaten my property because you have already done damage, broken through a privacy fence and coming on private property, I might lick off a couple warning shots. I mean, just to let you know. I'm not.
I probably would have shot one up in the air and then been like, "Get back! I'm not playing. Get back!"
Yep,
like,
absolutely.
He handled it a lot calmer than I would have, to be honest.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, we've all talked about it. We have families and things like that. And then not only that, but again, if you're bringing it to me, like you're coming on my property, bringing it to me, and this is the other thing too, especially at a time where there's a distrust between the community and the police. Look, the police take minutes to arrive. An altercation is seconds. So calling the police and things like that, it's not really an option, even if you did have 100% faith in the cops. But people don't even have faith in the cops. So I'm not even thinking that they're going to come and try to protect my black ass. And
I don't think they're going to protect me either, for people that don't, that see things,
right,
based on color. I've never felt like the cops are going to look out for me. Like they give a shit about me. I'm going to call. I'm going to get put on hold. I'm not, that guy called. Supposedly he called the police. He called the security. Nobody was coming, buddy. It was him and his bowed-out wife.
Yeah. And my wife knows how to shoot. I posted a couple videos on my story just in case. So, whole family don't play around. I got 4 kids and they all bang, bang. So, got a little militia in my crib.
Yeah, speaking of shots fired, we had Trump going a little bit of the defensive of not knowing that there was some bounty on U.S. troops' heads provided by Russia. So I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know much about this story right now. So, Glenn, I'm going to let you start the introductions here. What do you got on this story, man? Are there bounties on U.S. troops?
Well, it depends on who you ask. So apparently the story here is that Russia allegedly paid the Taliban to I'll just start it like this. Great Britain pretty much blames Russia for the Skripal spy poisoning, and attack that pretty much plunged Moscow into the deep freeze, basically, that they're currently in right now. Anybody that knows anything about the situation. So Russia allegedly paid the Taliban to take out not only British soldiers that are on their soil, but also American soldiers and really anybody else. That's of, now I don't want to say the Western world, but that's part of the UN. And it's so I'll just tell you, look, Russia targeted the UK and other armed forces stationed in Afghanistan. That's I don't think that anybody is really denying that. My whole thing is, this isn't anything new. This isn't anything new at all. I mean, they've known this for years. It's called proxy war. It's called proxy war. How else could the Taliban afford 19 years of war? Like, seriously, like bombs and bullets don't grow on trees. It's crazy. It's crazy. This is exactly what's going on. As much as I hate to say it, I agree with Trump. I think it's fake news. I think it's fake news. And this is how the Taliban has funded themselves for 19 years, with this whole proxy war, fake news, trying to razzle things up, create conflict, sort of tactic. So yeah, this is nothing new. That's pretty much all I have to say on that. I mean, in my opinion, it's an open and shut case. I don't really know what the hell Great Britain is doing, even entertaining this stuff. But what do you got, Kenny?
Yeah, first of all, so I agree. I actually think it's not completely fake news, in that kind of what you were saying is that this does happen. I don't think people understand the nuance that often takes place in these wars. Of course, Taliban, how would they have ever been able to survive this long, right? They've been funded on both sides by different organizations. They've
by
been
the U.S., by Great Britain. Correct. We fund the Taliban.
Yep.
I don't think that's anything new.
And depending on what angle we need them to fight, we will kind of, feed one side, or we'll end up fighting them. And sometimes they're on our side and sometimes not. I think the overblownness is the fake news part of it, because of course this is something that, there's some truth to it, but it's not the story that they're trying to convey, which is, oh, well, Russia's just paying for us to get murdered. It's not that simple. Now,
Yeah.
I think Russia is a very careful opponent when it comes to certain things. They fight on both sides a lot, which so do we. So does Great Britain. So does Iran. So does Iraq. I mean, these different situations are things that when we get intel, I think, of course, some of it's true. I think we'd be stupid to think none of this is true. But it's also just not as clear as people want to make it seem. And so you have to look at it, figure out what specific thing was going on at that time. I do think it's going to be trouble if we dig deep into it. As American lives, I think Trump has shown a very good propensity to be very strong when it comes in terms of so let me turn this down. In terms of having people, American lives. When the American lives got lost is when he, blew the one guy off the face of the earth. So I do think it's something that matters to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it's that big of a story. I think it is for people that don't know any military understanding.
Right.
But I think that they should probably look deeper into it, because it's not as, like, I heard it and I wasn't shocked. I just go, oh, I wonder what the move was there, and how much intel. There's intel that disagree. Now, I don't think intel disagrees whether or not the bounty per se happened. It was the why. It's the how. It's how does that fit in with what's going on? Is it just simply the Russians were like, kill Americans, here's some money, boom, boom? No, like most people that know, it doesn't work like that. So,
and I think that's a lot of the reason why Trump really is kind of just dismissed it, because the intel was there, but the intel wasn't credible intel. It really wasn't giving any sort of backstory as to the reason why for this whole thing, and therefore it just wasn't really worth entertaining. And as much as I hate agreeing with Trump, I think he was spot on with that. But I'll be a coon and an Uncle Tom by the morning.
At some point, that's going to get tiring for you, man.
Yeah, right.
It's the truth. It's the truth, man. You can't. It is what it is. Like,
speaking of
again,
Trump being
not that
tough,
big of a story.
Speaking of Trump being tough, he came out and did an executive order on federal property. You can't remove Civil War monuments or any kind of monument, historical relic, so be it, on federal property, or you're going to face up to 10 years. I don't know if that was signed into law yet or not, but I know he was talking about it. I'll let you guys debate about it, but that's our next topic. Is the way to go about this lawlessness, just rip them down, get them off? Or should we do this the right way and say, hey, look, we know they should come down. Some of them, maybe some of them should, maybe they all should. But if some of them should they come down the right way? Should we go through the court process? Should we go through the legal process? Can we have this kind of anarchy going on? So who wants to jump in first?
I'll jump first. I think that I actually didn't hate Biden's answer to it, which is that some of them should go and some of them should stay. I do think there should be a process to do it the right way. I think having an order to it does matter. I think having anarchists start ripping stuff down, half the time these kids don't know what they're talking about. There's a lot of nuance to it. It needs to have something that has its full debate out there. I think people got to not be scared to say things that people might look at and go, well, why? And then you go, okay, well, that's why we have these discussions, just like we have here on this channel. And so I would like to have that discussion. I think that they will, probably move some certain things off of, I know they were talking about the Stonewall Jackson. And, it sounds like something that, maybe something worth taking down. So it's a discussion that I think should be had, but I think there should be a structure to it. I think the idea of bullying your way into people's ideals, whether you be a racist white person, somebody that is very upset about slavery past, being a bully is not the right answer, no matter what it is. So having good discussions, at least even if we disagree, hey, people lose ideology. I can't say it right.
Ideological.
Thank you. Arguments And it happens. I mean, sometimes you're not going to be exactly happy with what happens. That happens when we elect people. Your guy loses sometimes. But I think that the discussion matters because there's going to be people that go, to me, I like historical stuff. I don't idolize it that way, but I might look at it different than somebody else who, had a grandparent who was a slave. So I can understand that I might have a different view of it there. And if I lose that discussion and that happens, I'm okay with it. I just don't want to see the anarchy because the amount of people that are ripping down things that don't make any sense. And there does end up becoming that, well, where do we draw the line? You're ripping down Christian statues because you're saying this, or then it's going to be Muslim statues, which they haven't touched because there's a lot of fear there. But it just, nobody's perfect. So then you have no monuments. And are we really going to go down that route? So what do you think?
Well, I don't necessarily agree. And let's just break it down. I mean, white supremacy is so ingrained in the American, I don't want to say culture, but just the way of America, it was built on it, that we don't even notice it. And
how so? What do you mean? Let's get specific.
So yeah, for sure. So absolutely. Yeah, let's dance. So about 50, maybe 51 years ago, Muhammad Ali went over to Great Britain. We've been talking about Great Britain, and he was interviewed. And he was actually asked to talk about America. He was interviewed about America, and he tried to talk about it and about white supremacy, but with a sense of humor, right? And so, he would say, as a little boy, I would go to church with my mom, and and of course, and I started to think, because he would do a lot of reading, and he started to think, hey, Mom, why is everything white, right? And he said, Jesus is white. Everybody at the Last Supper was a white man. The angels are white. He's like, why are the angels white? Are there black angels? How come they didn't take any pictures? You can imagine a little boy, saying this, right? I mean, he was trying to be comical about it, but he does have, it's a very, very concerted point. So Tarzan, the king of the jungle, is white. You got Tarzan ripping lions' mouths open and talking to the animals, and yet the black people that have been there for centuries can't talk to the animals. It really is kind of crazy. Then he went on, he kind of, goes on a little tangent. He's like, you got White House cigars, you got White Swan soap, White Cloud tissue paper. How come the angel food cake is white and the devil food cake is chocolate, right? So, he's like, you got Snow White, the president lives in the White House, but yet everything that's bad is black, the little ugly duckling was a black duck. The black cat is the cat that brings bad luck. If you're threatened, you're blackmailed, right? Why isn't it white mail? White people lie. So it kind of brought all these things, right? And for a little boy to sort of have that insight, it makes a lot of sense. But one thing that I really do want to talk about on more of a serious note is white. And my main preface here, Kenny, just so that you understand it, is white supremacy is so ingrained in American culture that we're still having a debate as to what the Civil War was about. There's quotes from literally every single state that was in the Confederacy. They wanted slaves. And so I actually have a colleague that's a historian. He works for the Smithsonian. And he recently spoke to the descendants of Robert E. Lee. They're still alive today, living in Virginia. And according to him, the descendants said, we're pretty much trying to tell him, because he was giving a speech. He was going to be giving a speech or like a TED Talk or something like that. And they were saying, hey, I hope that you'll have some sort of empathy for my father. Now, how many of you guys had slaves or owned slaves? Or how many of your parents even had slaves or owned slaves? Zero, right? So it's not your fault. It's not your fault. But at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge the history. And a lot of people today, what they'll actually say is, well, let's stop focusing on that. Let's move forward. Let's be happy. And I get that. And I get that. And I'm in total agreement with it. But you can't move forward based on a lie. like the reason that Germany, for example, was able to move forward is because they've been honest about their past. They've been honest about what they've done, right? So they don't have this issue. They don't have Nazi flags flying. They don't have Hitler statues. And that's the reason why. And there's not an issue with it. And so what I want to actually tell you right now in terms of the statues is people just don't know their history. If you actually take a map of the United States, right? And let's say that this hand is the West Coast, right? Pretty much from, let's say, from Midwest to West Coast, basically from Mississippi west. And then this is the East Coast, right? There's literally like 3 Confederate statues on the West Coast. There's 157, most of them in the Southeast. Now, I'm going to give you just a really quick example, right?
Well, hold on.
In Memphis, Tennessee.
I just don't want to. I'm getting. There's a lot of different things that you've already addressed that I haven't been able to reply to yet, and so I just don't want to get too far down the line. You can definitely pick up from where you're at.
Yeah, let's do it.
But yeah, a couple of the things that I just don't agree with. First of all, what Muhammad Ali had said when he was talking about all those different things, it's like, well, that's kind of silly to me, because if you go to any other country, right, when you go to Mexico and you look at your 12 apostles, guess what? They're not white. They're not. They're all Hispanic. Okay, they're chubby. They look different. You get your ones from Africa, it's the same thing. Guess what? All black. Okay, that is just whichever. No, they're
not. Where'd you get that from?
Yes, if you, I'll go ahead and send you a photo of it. But yeah, I mean, many of my friends who were black, they had 12 disciples, all black. From, let's say you get it from when in the Marine Corps, I had a friend went to Djibouti, and when you go down to there a lot of their old pictures and stuff, they're pictures of Jesus, and that they're all going to look in the area in which they are. Same with, they have really Korean Jesuses. They have.
Let me talk about that really quick, because you do have a point to an extent. So, and what I like to sort of preface it or liken it to is baby dolls, for example, right? When you go into a toy store, you're lucky if you find one black one. For the most part, you're going to find majority white baby dolls for kids to play with. It's not a bad thing if you go into a black home and you see a picture of the Last Supper for it to be black people. That's not a bad thing. What I'm talking about is the systemic portrayal of who Jesus was. Like, and instead of, it really should just be going off the basis of the Bible as to what he looks like. I don't know about you, but I don't know any white people that have hair like wool, bro.
Well, I know lots. I mean, if you ever go to the Middle East, you'll meet 100,000. So it's the not Middle white East. Like European.
Yes, the Middle East. They're not going to look like you. They're gonna.
Correct. They're not going to look like you either. I mean,
right, they're not going to have fair skin.
It's funny to me. It doesn't.
Yeah, they're not going to be like jet black either. For sure.
I mean,
but what's portrayed here in America as a whole in most countries across the nation,
because America was a predominantly. Once the, post-Indian fight.
I was going to say, because America was Indian.
You've created the way that this is going to look. To me, you go, okay, so what does that actually mean? Is that really what's holding somebody back? Is that really what's slowing down African-American success in this country? I think that's hogwash. I think it's so far away from actually.
And look, And I was just making a very small point. I'll be very clear to say, taking down statues, it does a few things. But one thing it doesn't do, it doesn't change any laws. It doesn't make anything better systemically. It's not going to bring water to Flint, Michigan. It's not going to release anybody from prison. It's not going to do any of that. And so I think that's kind of where you're going, and I get that. But what it does do...
All I'm trying to say is that it doesn't necessarily, when you have if I go to anywhere, if I go to Italy, and Italy has these certain things that they've set up for their environment, that doesn't mean that they're racist towards anybody that doesn't look white Italian. It just means that is the percentage. It's like, why don't they have black dolls? Well, you go into the stores, if there's 11% or 12% African American, that means 1 out of every 10 dolls is black. Now, if they didn't have that number, they should. And they will, because people will buy them. If you sold them, they buy them. Now, I've seen things on why a black child looks at a black doll and thinks this doll is bad. Okay, but that to me has a lot more to do with understanding the two-parent family home, why they would think that. There's a lot of
portrayal of blacks in the news and in the media and in movies and film. Yeah, that has a lot to do with it
what
too.
black people have decided to portray themselves as. Back in the 80s and 90s, they decided, hey, we want to be an edgy, the society. They wanted to fight the power. They wanted to show this strength.
No. We didn't want to. We have to, just like we're doing today, currently. It's a
you can make that argument, but
it's a valid one. I can bring up several points to back it.
But they are doing it. They're doing it. That wasn't white society going, hey, here's how we're going to portray you. This is how they were portrayed.
Not true. Did you miss the entire era of the 70s and the blaxploitation movies and all that? That was not that was white people's portrayal of blacks. That was not.
So that's not black portrayals of black. So let me ask you this.
That was a very small percentage.
I want to keep it completely 100. When we hang out, if you see a black guy and a white guy, more often than not, who is your assumption that is tougher?
My assumption that is tougher?
Yes. If you saw a white guy and a black guy walk up, your first assumption is going to be who is tougher, who is the better athlete. Let's just keep it 100.
So I'm giving the better athlete to the black guy all day, but that's
all day.
That's proven. That's
okay.
Proven.
I don't doubt it's proven.
And look, and I'll tell you how it's proven or not. Because they tried to segregate them. They had the Negro League, then they had the all-white league. But why was the Negro League making more money? Because nobody wants to watch a bunch of white people fumbling and bumbling the ball all day.
No doubt. No doubt. And so
that's proven. In terms of tougher, that's subjective, anecdotal at best.
It is subjective, but you and I both know that comedians make jokes about white people being corny and black people being tough because as a aggregate, there is truth to it. That's the reason it's funny. It's not funny if I say, hey, yeah, man, if I say this white dude's got a big ding-a-ling, the reason it's funny is because the assumption is he doesn't have a big ding-a-ling, right? We know that. That's the joke. It doesn't mean it's always true. I'm not saying that this is all the way across the board. I'm just saying that we have to be able to look at things and go, some of this is actually the culture that has been and I'm not saying some of it wasn't determined by white supremacy.
Absolutely,
I just
because
don't
it definitely
think
was
that,
a lot of it. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Sure.
I think a lot of it is the choice that people made that said, hey, this is how we're going to stand up against the issues that have happened in the past.
Yeah, like, do you think black people just woke up one day and was just like, oh, man, I'm going to say fuck the police today for nothing? Like, it didn't happen like that.
No. Not like
there's a reason there's a reason blacks have been targeted since, but before slavery ended, do you know that there was 150,000 prisons in this country prior to slavery ending? Mm-hmm. And do you know that 98% of them were by white folks? Were occupied by white people. Once slavery ended, they started creating all of these laws to lock up black people because they knew they weren't going to have jobs. They knew they were going to be homeless. So it was illegal to be homeless.
They knew they had problems. They didn't read. They didn't have the skill sets. They wanted to control them. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not saying none of that happens. I'm just merely saying. And it's still
very prevalent today. You live in the South now. I'm sure. Look. My family's from Alabama. There's still several people that do not know how to read, man, especially if they're like baby boomers or even later.
Right. Like, what I'm saying is that crazy. Some of that stuff is not just systemic from the whites. That also is a cultural issue that needs some attention to it. And
I agree. And I've been the first to say that blacks need to hold themselves accountable as well too. And I've said that since episode 1.
Right.
I haven't been
and
any
here's
sort
where
of
I'm
pundit
going.
on that.
So pause that right there, Glenn, because that's the same thing most people feel about whites. But we don't get that. People don't look at white people. They go, "Oh, well, you guys are just ignoring this." It's like, no, we're not.
The reason why is because there's people that are still trying to argue why slavery or why the Civil War happened. It happened based off of white supremacy.
Really. Like, I've never heard anybody.
It did. White supremacy and economics were the main things. Without slavery, we wouldn't have this country today. The South crumbled. And that's exactly why they started to create laws to re-enter black people into slavery legally, because
they did that immediately.
Immediately, exactly.
Yeah, they did that immediately. So it wasn't like it just crumbled. They did it immediately. And slavery has always, the problem is that we don't have enough real discussion about slavery, because, for instance, there's the book called White Frailty, and it says why white people can't talk about slavery. That's not true. White people can talk about racism. Okay. The problem
they should be able to. I think there's a deep-seated guilt. It really shouldn't be there because, again, it's not your fault. It's just the history that we have to deal with honestly, right? But we have to have honest conversations about it.
The history also has to be looked at from a 2,000, maybe even 8,000 year look. Like slavery, we're acting like slavery is something unique to this country, that America's stain on America. That it's like, of course it's a stain. It's a stain on the entire world.
The entire world, exactly. America was just one of the last to jump on board and start offering civil liberties to black people. And not only that, but America arguably was the harshest, the absolute harshest. I mean, let me put it in perspective for you, right?
You said America was the harshest on slaves?
I mean, in recent times, within the past, the last 100 years, absolutely. Now, if you go back to like the Roman times, and that's a totally different conversation. There's slaves right now. I mean, there's an entire slave trade right now. We get that. That's a totally different conversation, right? I don't think they're being I don't think they're being led with spiked chains and stuff. I don't think they've got spikes in their neck and being dragged along with spiked leashes and shit. I don't think it's like that. I don't think they're being, well, maybe they are probably being raped every day. But it's awful, right?
It's awful.
Slavery is awful.
Slavery is awful. I mean, obviously, slavery is awful.
There's my point. There's a deep-seated, I don't want to say anger, but I think you kind of touched on it. I think a lot of the African-American community doesn't feel like America or the white community has properly addressed this. And here's why. Small example, right? I have a few examples that I need to get out, but I want to just get out this one, then I'll let you rebuttal. For example, World War II, Japan. America paid Japan $20,000 for their 4 years of captivity, and rightfully so, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? They're in the Civil War.
The internment camps?
Exactly. So America, paid that. I don't want to say restitution, if you will, or reparations, right? And rightfully so. $20,000 per person, per Japanese person, for 4 years. What do you pay for 256 years of captivity? Black people are pissed. There's been several promises made that weren't fulfilled. We could talk about 40 acres and a mule. Black people are pissed. One thing that I want to talk about, and the point that I was going to get to, because the general premise of this conversation is about statues and monuments, right? So Memphis, Tennessee, you've got Nathan Bedford Forrest. The monument. So Nathan Bedford Forrest, and all it says on the monument is Confederate States Army Lieutenant General. It's got his birth date and his death date. That's it. Nathan Bedford Forrest made a fortune off of the slave trade. A fortune. He was the original Grand Wizard of the KKK. He led the Confederate massacre of black and white soldiers. Screw black and white, American soldiers, right? In the Civil War. This monument wasn't created, wasn't resurrected in 1865. It wasn't resurrected in 1866. They didn't look at him as a hero of his time. This monument was resurrected in 1970. 1970, 2 years after Martin Luther King was shot in the neck. So, and most of the statues, again, that 158 statues that were resurrected, most of them were resurrected 2 time periods between 1921 and 1940, and from 1965 to 1975. That's when most of the Robert E. Lee high schools, all of these different statues that we talk about today, they weren't put up. And look at what was going on at the time. The 60s, they were put up specifically in defiance of blacks being granted the right to vote, of the civil rights movement. It was very specific. That's what we're talking about. So black people are pissed because this hasn't been addressed. We all saw the movie Selma. They all crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Do you know who Edmund Pettus was? He was the second Grand Wizard of the KKK. This is crazy. Woodrow Wilson, we all know he had 300 slaves. At the time of his death, he had 150 slaves. You guys should all read a book called Slavery as It Is. It was created in 1868, and all the book is a book of newspaper clippings from that time. So it's Slavery as It Is. It's newspaper clippings from that time. Woodrow Wilson had a slave that ran away. He put out a newspaper article, and in his newspaper article, he specifically said, anybody that catches this nigger gets $10 extra per 100 lashes that they give him, up to 300 lashes. That's the president of the United States. So again, white supremacy is so ingrained in this country, we don't even see it. It's on our money. It's in every little aspect of everything. Well, you live in Georgia right now, right? Mm-hmm. You live in Georgia right now. So I'm sure you've heard of Stone Mountain, Georgia, right? Mm-hmm. You ever been to Stone Mountain? You know what it is? Mm-mm. It's a big ass, it's literally a big, humongous mountain. It's a big stone of mountain. With four carvings in it. It looks like Mount Rushmore, but it's not Jefferson and this and that. It's KKK members, slave owners. So do you know when Stone Mountain was carved?
Here's the thing.
It wasn't carved in the 1800s.
So, but what does that mean? You really think that has any bearing on 99% of black people in the South?
Absolutely, hell yeah!
I don't.
So there's a city called Stone.
There's no doubt in my mind.
Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Again, I'm not against people saying, hey, again, being able to take things down if they go through the methods. That's what the argument is. Take it down, but it just simply isn't real on what I see. Actually, whether or not people, you go down to the south side of Valdosta, that's not the problem. You could interview those people. Look, none of those people know that. Not
it
none.
It doesn't matter. But the point is doesn't matter if they know it or not. Their
right.
ignorance.
Well, exactly.
Ignorance is an individual thing. It's
I understand
not a totality
that, but
thing.
in terms of having people, whether or not we're going to have them be successful moving forward, you can say, hey, we can have these discussions. Hey, for people, it's kind of like the whole June 19th was such a joke to me because most people had no idea what that was.
And I think that's the issue too, right?
Used it the wrong way.
We don't know.
Idea what he's talking about.
I think that's the issue too, is a lot of people just don't know the other side of the argument because they don't have these discussions. They don't talk to another person on the other side. They don't know.
If you sat a black person down, and maybe not every black person, maybe less than 50%.
I was saying for the white people probably don't know these arguments that you're trying to bring up right now because they haven't heard them.
I know for a fact the white people don't know.
Right, but I'm saying,
but you can't just say because the black people don't know that it.
Anybody that was born after 70, anybody was born after 70,
negligible.
like how are we supposed to relate though? You know what I mean? Because we've never seen the slave trade or anything related to slavery. I haven't in my 44 years. You know what I mean?
What I'm saying
it's hard for a person to relate when you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that side of it. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't. For sure. You know what I mean? Like history, American history, I understand, but I don't. You know what I mean?
Like, and that's part of the problem. Everybody thinks that Chinese people or Asian people are so much smarter than Americans. That's not the case. They have a phenomenal education system. That's the difference. Our education, even the top of our education system in America,
they also have different parenting values.
Yeah.
And that's up for debate too. And I actually agree with that. But it starts with parenting. But the education system is so much higher over in Asia. They're not just smarter than us.
Right.
It is what it is. It is what it is, right? So my whole point is this: we can't continue to teach people that Christopher Columbus was this guy that discovered America and all this bullshit. That's a lie. Like we can't just continue to whitewash history because it's convenient.
Well, Christopher Columbus is not white, so I don't know why that's whitewashing anything. Christopher Columbus is not white. So
that's not the point. The point is it's a lie.
I'm just merely saying
he didn't discover America.
Of course not.
It's a lie.
He got here and people were here. So I think
we were all taught.
But most people, I don't believe that. I'm not saying that we weren't all taught that.
A lot of kids these days won't even know that, dude. They don't even know the boat he sailed in on.
Christopher Columbus.
They should know it.
I know they
should know it. Like they should be taught the truth. That's what we're saying. Like people should know what.
But do we really want to teach the truth? Because there's some truth that people aren't going to like.
Do you think Germany is not teaching the whole truth over to their kids about the Holocaust? They're teaching it. They're teaching it.
But we didn't have the Holocaust to do it. Here.
We had something way worse. Way worse.
Disagree.
Way worse for way longer. For way longer.
Well, you're comparing apples to oranges.
It is. It's an apples to oranges comparison. Like they're both horrible. They're both horrific.
Yeah, they're just totally different. Because Germany, if you go back long enough, they had slaves too. So, I mean,
it's the only thing that I can think to really compare. Like in terms of the level of torture, in terms of the humanic control of another, or in terms of a superior and inferior ideology.
If we can address certain things, which I want to be open to being able to address, then we also have to be able to discuss what is going on today. Why is Baltimore, which we defunded the police after Freddie Gray, for people that don't know that, we defunded it, and it's the 11th
by a little bit,
But since then, it is the 11th most dangerous city in the entire world, not just in America, in the world.
Before the defunding, it was number one. It teetered back between Camden, New Jersey, and Baltimore for 10 years.
That was in America. Since the defunding, it got worse. I have some stats here. It went from 7th to 11th. It has gotten from 11th to 7th. Ferguson went to be the 9th in the world. Your average age
Baltimore was at 12. It's at 11. So and look, and I'm not taking anything away from that, but you also have to take into account. I mean, you do realize that the Baltimore Police Department is under a lot of scrutiny, and rightfully so. I mean, they're gang members with badges. I mean, they play.
Actually, they're gonna have their
this is the same problem
that,
that we had talked about before, and I'm gonna go ahead and read you a quote real quick. It says, because you had the problem which we've talked about before is where you say defund and then you define it the way that Glenn believes it should be defined, and you'll have somebody
because that's been done before and it's been successful.
Well, but again, there's so many different factors to what the defunding is, what you're going to do with the money, how much of that money ends up moving. So I'm just going to use this example. Emmanuel Cleaver from Missouri had said that he didn't like the way that it was called because he says this is a spine-chilling, nightmarish name for a masterful idea. I wish we could get rid of the title. I think what we need to do is re-engineer the police. But then in a response to that, AOC came out and said, no, defunding police means defunding police. It does not mean budget tricks or funny math. It does not mean moving police officers from the budget to the Department of Education. And my point is just that until somebody comes up with a structured, a cohesive clarity thing, because what we've talked about before, which I spoke about, is that if we still haven't seemed to have any follow-up on less laws. So we think we're going to defund and have the same amount of laws. Man, this is going to cause some serious problems. Yeah. I'm very, very concerned about what it's going to do to Baltimore, New York. Without changing the laws, And yes, New York's person came out, and I don't, they're the police. I don't give them a whole bunch of, the guy came out and was like, it's going to be bedlam. It's like, well, part of me believes it only because if we don't have it well illustrated what's going to happen and we don't take away some of the laws, then you're just going to have less people doing more police work. And that is a very dangerous idea. And I'll get your thoughts on that.
I mean, same thing with social workers too, right? They have too many cases to handle right now. You're going to put the same burden on the police force, same thing's going to happen to them. It's going to be a whole lot of mental wear and tear on other individuals, and they can't handle it. I'm telling you right now, based on people I know.
Absolutely. And there's got to be an honest discussion about it. I mean, it's not a dichotomy. It's not like you're on the defunding the police side and you think it's just one thing, or you're not for defunding the police and you think it's another. I think most of Americans right now in this time think that some sort of police reform needs to happen.
Of course.
And I think that really what we're beginning to see a lot more audits of the First Amendment when it comes to the police department and things like that. And honestly, there needs to be way more training. I'm just going to come out and say that right now. I think that's the first start. In order to be a police officer, tote around a gun and a badge, have that level of authority over people, you need to go to a 4-year college minimally, right? You got to go to a 4-year college to be a freaking chef. Yeah, you're letting people have guns and stuff after 3 months, 6 months. It's crazy.
I mean, and that's the thing, though, right? They can still be
the law.
They could be police officers, but they can't be getting a gun right out of freaking boot. You know what I mean? Like, let's let them get a little bit. They can't even be
police officers.
Yeah.
They can't even be police officers because even though they don't have a gun, they can still make it bad for somebody because they're still in a position of authority. They wear the uniform. They can walk up on people, question them like they're the goddamn Gestapo, and and hey, let me see your ID. No,
so I do think to make it better.
ID. Am I breaking a law?
To make things better, though, I think you're gonna have to spend more money and not less money.
I do too. That's one of the problems that I think is going to happen, unless if you take laws.
Yep, if you take laws off the books and then you actually do.
Have you heard anybody else say that, Glenn? Because outside of me and you, and like I said, the one person that was on Trump's round table, I can't remember her name right now, that I was super excited about, but haven't heard anything about that. Nothing. I've heard nobody talking about cutting some of those.
One thing I haven't heard it from the Black Lives Matter movement, which I think is pretty sad because I think they should be the main ones pushing.
That's a good tease. That's a good tease for next episode. So let's not give that away. Let's do that for next episode. We'll get into that and some more of these detailed talks. So let's kind of wrap things up right here. Let's give our closing arguments. Kenny, you want to go first real quick, boss?
Sure. First, I'm going to go a little bit different because we were going to talk about something we didn't talk about. I just want sports to be back. I really think something that, I do care about this country. I love this country. Hopefully we can take care of, having these tough discussions. But I am looking forward to.
Hold on now. Wait a minute. You said something. What were we talking about? Sports?
Let's
talk about it.
I was going to throw in. Yeah,
we'll do 2 minutes on it. Let's do it.
Cam Newton going to New England. As a Dolphins fan, I hate it. I think it's a great fit for him. I think taking less money was smart for him. He's had a lot of health issues, but he is young. He's younger than Russell Wilson. He's an MVP.
How old is Cam?
Player?
28?
31?
Yeah, he's 31.
Okay.
31. And the New England has a door wide open there. They have no, incumbent. I mean, Jared Stidham. I don't know that I would believe in him. And it stinks for me because I really like the way the Dolphins were building themselves up. I thought they were going to be a little creeper team, but New England in typical New England fashion. I like
slid
him.
Right in.
So I'll go ahead and be completely honest about that. I just like his demeanor and personality. I think he's entertaining. I like that he gives the balls out to the kids. I think he does things the right way. I know he rubs some people the wrong way, but that's my kind of dude.
Some consider him a front runner. Some consider him a front runner. He's good to go when the times are good. Man. He's good to go when times are good, but when the chips are down,
that's everybody.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day,
Hey,
he's a
I'm
human
I'm
being.
only speaking the word, man.
Yeah, no, and you're right, Fred. But I mean, at the end of the day, he's a human being. I like
Oh,
Cam
I get
Newton
it. I
too.
get it. I like
Um,
Cam. He's been on plenty of my fantasy teams.
yeah, I don't like him for fantasy, bro.
I
but
know. I know. Trust me, I know.
I don't like him for fantasy, but Cam Newton he's a class act. I do like
He is.
I don't like to use the word
I think
flamboyant. He's not
he'll
flamboyant.
thrive.
He's
He'll thrive
confident.
in the Patriot system.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people out there that don't like to see like he's not mouthy. I want to say mouthy. He's not like a To or like a Ocho
Can we
Cinco or
just say the
somebody.
truth? He's a very, very good looking man. Okay. He is a good looking man. And he is
He puts
big.
on like Southern gardener outfits though,
I
like
don't
he's
care.
working at a
He looks like
greenhouse.
God chiseled him out of something. The guy's 6'5", 245-pound Greek god. He's got the perfect skin tone. He's got a
I think
genuine
Kenny's got a crush
smile.
on Cam.
I might have a little mini crush on Cam. I'm just saying that people like to hate on that kind of guy. They just do.
That's what it is. That's what I was getting at. They
I
like
met
to
him
hate
on the
him.
field. Me and Adam Elm went down on the field, met him. Dude was super nice, super respectful. You know, I believe he took a picture with Adam's son, if I remember correctly. He was down to give away his stuff. I mean, I don't have nothing but good things to say about Cam. So I hate New England. Nobody wants to see them crash and burn more than I do.
I hate him too, man. I can't
Yeah,
stand
I
New
don't like
England,
him
but
either.
I think it's going to be a good move for Cam Newton. I mean, him being under Belichick is only going to help him. I think he did a smart thing. I mean, on the surface, his agreement looks kind of shitty. I mean, 1 year, $7.5 million, but it's incentive laden. Tons of incentives with that contract, and I'm sure he'll meet every requirement to
if he plays
receive
good,
those incentives.
they'll re-sign his ass. They don't have anybody in the works. They got
Absolutely.
Statham or some shit like that.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
and he's going to do good. I mean, the Patriots are a solid organization.
Right.
As
As
much as
long
I
as
can't
he's
stand the
healthy,
Patriots.
Right. I
his
think it
back
was a
holds up.
contract. I think it was a contract based on his health from like the auto accident he had, the foot injury he had. So it was a
He's had
multitude of
issues
things.
staying healthy, man. He's been injured a lot, but there's a part of me that feels like, and I don't really know if Cam is this kind of guy, but personally, I would be a little bit butthurt knowing that the Panthers signed Teddy Bridgewater for $150 million, 5 years. Teddy Bridgewater, the backup to Minnesota. I don't know. I think I would. Look, Cam could have at least got 15 mil for 1 year. They could have did him a little bit better, just a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, 7.5 million for an MVP 1 year, still technically in his prime. That is low.
That's
That
pretty
is
low.
low. I mean, I know he's been
low.
injured, but I mean, damn, and especially for you to not even have any other options.
He did come off. He did
That's
come
one
off
of the worst contracts of the year.
He did come off a season-ending injury last year.
Well, it's
So
interesting. I mean, the quarterback from Tampa,
Brady.
Jameis. No, Jameis. No, Jameis took a discounted deal too, and I actually think both of them did a good deal for themselves. We'll see how it ends up playing out.
Where'd Jameis end up?
Jameis is the backup at New Orleans right now.
New Orleans, but
okay.
Jameis is. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he's been. I like him, but he's been a disappointment. I mean, he hasn't played up to
too many
his potential at all.
interceptions.
But he's thrown 32 touchdowns, a lot of touchdowns. I mean, a lot of touchdowns.
That's a lot of touchdowns.
All right, so Kenny,
30's a lot of picks, but
getting back to you, Kenny.
Because they had 23.
30.
Yeah, 23.
30
interceptions. Holy cow!
Yeah. He was 30 last year. He was 30 for 30 last year with touchdowns and interceptions.
32 and 30.
Yeah, there you go. So, all right, Kenny, go back to your closing arguments, boss. Sorry I interrupted, man.
No, you're good. But first of all, I just appreciate everybody watching the show. I'm so grateful that we have the group that we have here to be able to have the discussions that we can have, that we can disagree, that I can learn, so that I can go back and do more research. And at the end of the day, we do care deeply about all of us as Americans and trying to make this the best country. And I really think that helps with us being able to have these discussions. And we appreciate all the people that join. I know there's a lot of comments we didn't get to. So we appreciate it. I love you guys. Again, I appreciate all the support while I've been sick. And I love my group here, and I'm just glad to be back.
All right, man. Kenny, glad to have you back, brother. You know, we missed you. I'm glad that your health is on the up. And, you know, again, we're glad to have you back. Glad that everybody is joining us tonight. I just want to go ahead and say that the main topic of the discussion for the evening tonight was about the Civil War monuments. And as you guys could probably tell, I'm a little bit passionate about it. Kenny is too. And again, I love having these guys as my co-host and as my colleagues. Not only colleagues, but friends. We all grew up together as well too. So it's an absolute pleasure to be able to do this. Don't mind Kenny hacking in the background. He's still getting over his little illness there. But you know, we always are busting each other's balls, and it's all good, even if the topics are serious. So that's one thing that I love. And again, the main reason why we started this podcast was to show people that, you know, as Americans, we can have these discussions, still come together and be brothers. But you know, statues, I strongly believe that, and I just want to be clear again, like I told Kenny, they're not going to bring anything. You know, they're not going to bring anything back. They're not going to, you know, they're not going to get rid of slavery in any sort of way. It's not going to change any laws, legislation. It's not going to release anyone from prison, none of that. But what it begins to do is it begins to recognize the detriment of this country. It's the history. It's no one's fault. And it begins to have those honest discussions. And there's a difference too, because I know there's people saying, where's the line going to be drawn and things like that. For example, the Washington Monument, that doesn't, I mean, George Washington, that Washington Monument doesn't symbolize anything about slavery or bigotry or anything like that. And George Washington certainly had slaves, but maybe that monument in particular, you know, he's being honored for maybe being the first president, maybe creating the country. You know, we do have to be selective. You can't just group all things in one. But obviously, there's a statue of George Washington with a black slave kneeling down to him or handing a white baby to a mammy or something like that. Don't think that needs to be a statue that we see every day. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass to Fred. But again, thank you all for being with us tonight. We look forward to seeing you guys on Friday night. And we will be getting to your comments. Also, don't hesitate. Shoot us an email if you like as well, too, at contra.dictions.us@gmail.com. We love all the feedback. Thanks again, guys.
All right. Thanks, Glenn and Kenny. Appreciate it. Hey, thanks, America, for tuning in. We had a lot of people in the comments. We will get them on next episode. I appreciate everyone tuning in. There's a lot you could be doing on a Wednesday night, and you chose to be with us. We really appreciate it. And like Glenn and Kenny both stated, hey, there's a right way and a wrong way to do these things. I know that some of these monuments shouldn't have been up this long, but they're up, and there's a right way to take them down. We can't have lawlessness. Let's do it the right way. Get them out of there. And you know, if somebody needs to see them, they'll be in a building somewhere, out of sight, out of mind. And if someone needs to actually go see them, they can go do that on their own time.
For sure.
So, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day with these monuments, let's do it the right way. This spray painting and anarchy is it's no good for anybody, man. Everybody's just going to get hurt at the end of the day. So let's keep it safe, America. I know we're still going with the COVID coming back and all that, but hey, stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll see you next episode. We love you.